Good afternoon. I think we're on. Yes, this is vk3sl and welcome to the Corona Missions afternoon session, and we are here on 160 metres narrowband FM mode and filling up a gap, a space, a Corona space. And lots of things happening here. It's busy at the coalface, back to work, back to the boredom, but there's always something to be had looking through the archives here or looking at subject matter, potential missions fodder. We always find something of interest. So we'll have some OTR shortly. But before doing that, instead of our usual 20s blitz, I'm going to firstly switch off our intro music. Thank you, Mr. F. And I think we'll just have a slight change of tack, and we'll feature an expose on the theremin. Now, I think we have looked at the theremin before, and it's a very early electronic instrument. It was invented in the 20s, and it involves two antennas. And manoeuvring one's hands in free space, I think it's a capacitive effect. It's an interesting one. It's sort of the father of a lot of sci-fi sounds that sort of anticipated the synthesizer, and it's a remarkable invention. So I reckon what we'll do is there's a little short doco here, very short actually. It just gives an illustrated radio commentary, it says, on the theremin. So that'll set the scene, and we'll give a couple of examples, and then we'll go to OTR land. So this just a reminder that we are transmitting on 160 metres FM. These are tone tests if you're listening on the radio, and if you want to be entertained, go and have a listen online. vk3sl has a dedicated YouTube channel. Can be found on YT. Just type in my call sign or go to the blog spot. It's this is my call sign again, vk3sl.blogspot.com. And there's all manner of information there if you want to be informed about what we do. So without any further ado, we'll have a listen to a short hearing about the theremin from 2000, vk3sl.
No doubt during this Halloween season, you'll hear some movie or some recording that has this familiar yet eerie sound. That sound gave birth to the greatest gift from engineers to the arts, the electronic synthesizer. The synthesizer began in the 1920s with Professor Leon Theremin. In a Leningrad engineering lab, he played around with the latest technology, radio. It fascinated Theremin because radio changed electricity into sound. He brought two parts of the radio close together so they made a sound like the squeal from putting a microphone too near a speaker. This propelled him, in his own words, to give these sounds a musical soul. He built an instrument where instead of physically bringing the two parts together, the performer's body would create the squeal. He would just wave his hands in front of the instrument, plucking music from the air. You've likely heard the theremin, as the instrument became known, in the 1950 sci-fi classic, The Day the Earth Stood Still. But well before that, theremin toured the world and captured headlines. The New York Times called it ether music. The Chicago Tribune said that theremin mysteriously reproduces music. Einstein called it as significant as when primitive man produced sound from a bowstring. The instrument made quite a splash until 1938, when theremin disappeared abruptly. Kidnapped by Soviet agents, he was sent to a labor camp until he agreed to work for the KGB. But Leon Theremin had planted a seed. In the late 1950s, a 14-year-old boy built a theremin from plans he found in a magazine. By age 20, he began making them commercially, selling enough to pay for his engineering education. The student, Robert Moog, used what he'd learned about electronic music from the theremin and built in 1964 the world's first synthesizer. With Moog's synthesizer, the child of Leon Theremin's wonderful instrument, electronic music became world famous with one of the best-selling classical albums of all time, Switched on Bach.
There we go. I didn't know. I realised the association with Robert Moog and the theremin. Poor old theremin being kidnapped. Well, here's a film of him, early days, playing his own instrument. And he talks about, I have a feeling it's not in English, but the sound examples will speak for themselves.
Электромузыкальный инструмент терминвокс – это первый инструмент такого типа. Это песенно-голосовой инструмент. В нем управление мелодией достигается посредством влияния на электромагнитное поле около инструмента.
There we go. There was Mr. Theremin himself. And I presume that's before he was kidnapped. Yeah, apparently they were developed out of early Russian Soviet research into proximity sensors. And it uses two antennas and to sense the relative position of the hands, and they're controlled oscillators for frequency, I think, with one hand, and the amplitude or the volume with the other. So quite a lot of expressive control. It's quite fascinating, and there's a whole aesthetic that grew from the theremin. When you think of what happened with synthesizers thereafter, it's quite profound. But the exciting thing is that there's some wonderful virtuoso theremin players out there now. This is just fantastic. So people have really learnt the techniques, and it requires incredible control because you're moving your hands in free space. You've got no sort of physical reference. It's not like having a fingerboard or a piano key with its displacements. It's just hands in free space relative to two antennas. And that's how it works. So it looks like someone's just doing a mime act when they play these instruments. We'll have a listen to one remarkable young fellow, a chap called Gregory Blanc. And we've featured a couple of his recordings on the missions in the last little while. I think the other night, on Friday, we played a track at the end. And anyhow, we'll have a listen to him. He's got a lot of stuff on his YouTube site, and they are all beautifully crafted performances. In fact, he often does double takes. He'll play the piano and the theremin, or another instrument in the theremin. But here's an example of him playing Debussy's Arabesque, famous Arabesque number 1, and Mr. Blanc is playing both the piano and the theremin in this example. how's that for music making? There we go. He goes to a vintage typewriter and writes, "Thanks for watching." Well, there we go. Unfortunately, there's a bit of distortion in these recordings. All his YouTube site seems to have this problem, and I'm wondering if the format he's uploaded is not entirely congruent with our, I don't know, with something, because other sites don't do this, but his does. Never mind, we can cope and we still get a strong idea of what's going on, and it's remarkable. Amazing sound. I want one. I've been looking up, as I've been listening, I've been looking up theremin kits. There's a theremin world where you can buy a theremin kit, and there's a range of different kit options. And you can get a decent kit for under $200. So maybe I need to put that on my Christmas list or my birthday list. I would like to have a go at the theremin. I think it'd be interesting to try, and I reckon I'd be able to do something on it. So there's a challenge. We'll see what happens, but I am keen. There's a lot of theremin kits out there, and of course it's all very related to radio. This is where truly validating volume and clarity in every sense of the word. These are tone tests using the heterodyne principle. So yes, theremin certainly gets a Guernsey when it comes to radio tests. It is by its very nature a radio-derived technology. Let's hear some more of Mr. Blanc, notwithstanding the noise. Notwithstanding the distortion. There's a film of him here. This is one of these 60-second docos. This is a great site. If you ever want to be titillated, have a look at these 60-second docs where various people doing quite unusual things give a 60-second detail and appraisal of their craft. Well, in this instance, we've got Mr. Blanc talking about his theremin.
It's very pretentious to consider yourself as a master. My name is Grégoire Blanc, I am 22 years old and I am an air musician. The theremin is this bizarre instrument that you play without touching it. You pick the notes in the air like on an invisible string and you play with two antennas. It became viral on YouTube and I have been invited to play everywhere thanks to these videos. And it's quite a challenge to play since your body makes the sounds. So you have a very physical connection. The audience is always fascinated by the instrument. You have to share feelings with them. It is deep, it is sincere, it's kind of magic. One day, I hope that I will be a rock star. It would be awesome.
Oh, I do hope he becomes a rock star. We need people like Mr. Blanc in this world. What an amazing musician. Well, let's listen to something else he's put together. This is a track called The Great Gig in the Sky. It's written for theremin, continuum and vintage synthesizer. So what he's done is play the three instruments and he's layered them up and made quite a compelling video of himself in three places at once. It's all very taining or non-taining depending on where you're listening. Give this another run. Well, the music of Pink Floyd, as you've never heard it before. Theremin, continuum synthesizer and vintage synthesizer. Looked like an old Moog or something. And he was sitting on the floor, cross-legged, and playing all three, or two of the instruments together, the continuum and the vintage synth, and then it crossed over to him, overdubbed the theremin. Very high production values, well made. Okay, well, I just found something else which sort of does state the obvious a bit. It's a bit brash, but I will play it anyhow because it does set the scene and helps flesh out the picture, and it looks at the physics of the weird and wonderful theremin. This is vk3sl. These are test missions on 160, and we are in the zone.
Electronic music is not for everyone. Whether it's dubstep or techno or electro swing or dark step or acid jazz, the unique sounds, beats, and rhythms are only possible thanks to some pretty slick but simple technology. Even though they seem like a modern invention, electronic instruments have been around for a lot longer than you might think. Leon Theremin, a Russian inventor and professor of acoustics, created one of the first ever electronic instruments in the 1920s called the etherphone. Or at least that's what he called it. Now we call it the theremin. The theremin is an electronic instrument that you can play without touching it. If I move my hand closer to this antenna, the pitch will go up, and over here, closer and farther away from this one, I can control the volume. It's like magic, but it's all based on electricity. Sound is produced when something vibrates, which makes the air vibrate, which makes our eardrums vibrate, which our brain interprets as sound. With guitars, of course, the vibrating part is the string. And with electronic instruments, it's an electric current that causes a speaker to vibrate. So we need to make electricity flow back and forth, which is what's called an alternating current. And perhaps the most important component to make that happen is a capacitor. A capacitor is a device that can store an electric charge. It's made up of two plates that conduct electricity with something in between them, whether it's air or another material called the dielectric. When there's an electric current, electrons want to flow between the plates, but they're blocked by the dielectric. So instead, the electrons get stuck on one side of the capacitor, and the electric charge, negative on one plate and positive on the other, keeps building up. With the right setup, those stuck electrons eventually change directions and head down the wire to the other side of the capacitor. This pattern continues with the electrons going back and forth to create an alternating current that oscillates at a certain rate or frequency. And that's what's going on in a theremin. Sort of. The thing is, the theremin doesn't have a whole capacitor in it. Instead, the theremin just has one plate of the capacitor, which is this antenna here. The other plate of the capacitor is my hand. So the theremin and I, plus the air between us, work together to make a full capacitor, which means that I control the oscillations of the current. When I move my hand close to the antenna, the capacitor's plates are closer together, so it stores more charge, and the current oscillates at a lower frequency. And when I move my hand farther away, the capacitor's plates are farther apart. Here it stores less charge and the current oscillates at a higher frequency. Now this current has the ability to vibrate a speaker and create sound waves. But first there's one final obstacle we have to overcome. The current would have a frequency of around 250 kilohertz, which is way above what humans can hear. So we can't send the current straight to the speaker. Instead, the theremin does something called heterodyning. Heterodyning is when you mix two currents together in order to change their frequencies. In the theremin, we mix our oscillating current with another preset current. This one's being produced inside the theremin and can't be easily interfered with. During heterodyning, these currents mix together to produce a final current with a human-friendly frequency, typically within the range of a piano. As a side effect, this mixing process actually switches the order of the frequencies. Higher becomes lower, and lower becomes higher. So you'll notice that the speaker produces higher notes if your hand is closer to the theremin, and lower notes if your hand is farther away. At long last, the current is ready to be amplified and sent to a speaker. The speaker then vibrates the air to make sound waves. A similar process happens with the volume control, except that the theremin converts frequencies into volume rather than pitch. And now you can make music without even touching an instrument. It's all possible with just a few simple electronic devices. Thank you for watching this episode of SciShow, which was brought to you by our patrons on Patreon, and thank you especially...
Okay. Well, that was sort of all very patently obvious. But it does set the scene. It helps flesh out the picture, our little expose on the theremin. Let's continue with some more examples. There's some amazing stuff online. Here's a recording of the music of Karol Szymanowski, and it's played by the theremin, Mr. Blanc again, and also the glass harmonia or glass harp. And the magical synthesis between these two instruments is just something to behold. It's something so amazing. Have a listen. This is Etude in B-flat minor with glass duo and theremin. That really is something to behold. The very sight of about 50 glasses partly filled with water, wine glasses, and someone so gracefully cajoling a sound out of the glasses by rimming the top of the glasses, and then the theremin. What a magical blend! Extraordinary stuff. This finding the subject compelling. There's another one of Mr. Blanc, and he's playing a theremin, and would you believe it, a musical saw duet. This is a band saw, the sort you use for chopping branches off trees, when he uses it with a bow, and he's able to exact pitch out of the saw and refine it to the point where he can duet with the theremin and the saw. It is something so incredible. So we're going to hear now the music of the famous Handel Halvorsen Passacaglia, performed by Mr. Blanc on both musical saw and theremin. Another miracle. I can't believe it. The musical saw. It's incredible. How can he get such exact and reliable pitch? Movement in space. This guy is just an absolute revelation. Incredible to behold such playing. And there we have it. The music of Handel Halvorsen, that's the famous Passacaglia, as played by Gregory Blanc on both the theremin and the musical saw. I'm riffing on this today, folks, because I'm compelled by the subject matter. And it fits into the wireless framework, of course, so we are doing tone tests with determination today on the air. Heterodyning on 160 metres. Let's see. Yes, here we go. This is also amazing. Now, this is the famous Glière. The Glière Concerto for Coloratura Soprano. Now, we did play this work a few weeks ago, sung by a soprano. I can't remember who it was. It's a fantastic piece of music. Anyhow, in this arrangement, we have theremin, clarinet, and piano. The Glière Concerto for Coloratura Soprano. Let's have a listen. You've listened to Glier's Concerto for Coloratura Soprano, arranged for theremin, clarinet and piano. It's from the website of Gregory Blanc, a theremin player. What other information can I supply? No, nothing more specific. Oh yes, the piano was Julien Leblanc, which may have been a relative, and Jenny McKay, I think, is the clarinetist there. All right, this is vk3sl test missions on 160, and I'm sort of multitasking here. I think we'll cut to the chase and we'll have a OTR segment, I think. We'll need to finish off the one we were listening to yesterday. It was a Criminal Investigations Bureau episode, CIB, all very authoritative. And yes, Mr. Strong at the helm. Crawford's production, and the one we listened to, the clue to the knotted stocking, I think it's called, the knotted stockings part 2. So let's have a listen to this. I was left in suspended animation yesterday, wondering what was going to happen, so we'll find out now. VK3SL testing.
CIB. From Australian police records come these true stories of day and night vigilance that protects our lives and our property, of prevention and detection in the unceasing war against crime. CIB. From New South Wales, the true story of the clue of the knotted stockings. This is a true story from Australian police records. Only names, place names and dates have been altered. Two women had died violently in almost exactly similar circumstances. Their bodies had been found in Sydney suburban parks. Both had been strangled. Both had been dragged about 15 yards. The clothing of both had been found in bushes some distance away from the bodies. And on both occasions, the investigating detectives found the imprint of a man's left heel at the scene. The imprint of a heel that had been worn down to the uppers. But in spite of the most strenuous efforts by the homicide squad, despite the utmost cooperation from a worried public, the killer defied detection. In fact, he was so certain, it would seem, of his ability to keep his identity hidden from the police that he struck a third time.
She's lying there in the park. Just a girl, she is. Not dead, but she's pretty badly knocked around. You'd better get out there quickly.
We've got her in the ambulance, Inspector. So if it's all right with you, we'll be getting along.
Yes, go for your life. The hospital's been notified to expect you.
Don't think it'll do much good. She's in a bad way.
Oh, not much hope?
I wouldn't think so. Still, you never know. Be seeing you.
Right. Now, Mick, let's get down to business. Any sign of her clothes?
Not so far. Tom Everett's organised a team to search the whole park for them.
Good, good.
Nothing lying around here to identify her as far as we've been able to find. But she was dragged from across there by the looks of it.
Yeah. Something very familiar about those drag marks, isn't there?
Yes, I'll say. And believe it or not, they're almost 15 yards long to the inch. Precisely the same length as the distance the other two girls were dragged, Molly Henderson and Hilda Maxwell.
Any sign of that worn-down heel mark?
No, not this time. And I wonder if these marks here have got anything to do with it at all.
Huh? Well, what are they?
Just come over here.
Right.
There. Have a look at those marks.
Motor tires.
Yes, a good, clear set of marks near and offside wheels.
Yeah. Get plaster cast taken, Mick. Fred.
Yes, sir?
Cordon off this area. And don't let a soul get near it till the men from the scientific section arrive.
Right, sir. Straight away, sir.
Now, Mick, I think we'd better...
Collins,
Oh, yes, Tom?
I think we found her clothes, carefully bundled up and hidden behind a boulder down near the south gate. Here, have a look.
Nice work, Tom. Well, not much doubt about it now, Mick.
About what?
That it was done by the same man who killed the other two. See how these clothes are tied together? With a stocking?
Yes.
And in precisely the same way as Molly Henderson's clothes were tied together.
Any identifying tags on the clothes?
I don't know. But let's get on with the job of finding out. Not a thing. Not a name tag or a laundry mark or any identifying mark of any kind.
Nothing even to show where she bought her clothes.
There's just one thing that occurred to me, though.
What?
Her shoes.
What about them?
Well, look, they're sort of unusual, don't you think?
Well, they're different anyway.
Well, that's what I mean. And because they're unusual and different, there might just be a chance of our tracing where they were bought.
Yes, true enough. But they're not so different that there wouldn't be plenty of other pairs exactly like them. And shoe stores don't keep a record of all their customers.
Of course they don't. But as far as I can see, the shoes offer just about the only chance we have of identifying the girl before someone comes forward and tells us she's missing. And that mightn't be till it's too late. So we're going to work on the shoes, even though the odds against them leading us anywhere must be terrific.
It was a remote chance and it meant a lot of painstaking work. But it paid off. In a remarkably short space of time, the detectives found themselves in the right shoe shop.
That shoe, sir, is exclusive to this store.
You mean no one else sells this style of shoe?
That's right, sir.
I see. Would they be made and sold in a large quantity?
Oh, yes. We sell a lot of them. They're a very popular style indeed.
Not unusual and different as we imagined, Mick.
No, doesn't look like it.
And so, miss, it would be quite impossible, I suppose, for you to tell us who bought these particular shoes from you?
Well, normally it would be impossible, sir. But in this case, I'm not so sure.
Eh? Well, what do you mean?
Well, there's a small mark inside. Just there, see?
Yeah, yes, I do see. But does it have any significance?
Well, it was put there to reserve this particular pair of shoes for a particular customer.
It was?
Yes. A girl came in a few weeks ago, tried them on and liked them. But she didn't have the cash to pay for them at the moment, so she asked me to hold them for her.
And you put that mark inside?
Yes, just to make sure.
But when she came back to buy them, you wouldn't inquire her name, would you? I mean...
As a rule, we wouldn't. But when she did come back, she asked to buy them on our pay-as-you-wear plan.
So you'd have her name and address?
Certainly we would.
And please could let us have it as quickly as you can. Yes? Inspector Collins here.
Highcliffe Hospital here, Inspector.
Oh, yes?
It's about that girl we brought in from Hendon Park.
Yes?
We're sorry to have to tell you, Inspector. She died without regaining consciousness.
So where do we go from here? The girl's parents can't help us one little bit. No one's seen or heard anything that could give us any sort of a lead. Yeah, we're right up against that old brick wall again.
Somehow we've got to go through it this time, Mick. 3 killings by the same man are 3 too many.
I'll take it.
Uh-huh.
Sergeant Hill.
Scientific section here, Sergeant. Stan Hanley.
Oh, yes, Dan, what's new?
The car was a Manchester.
Eh? What car?
We made the plaster cast of those tracks at Hendon Park.
Yeah.
And we also took a lot of measurements on the spot.
Yeah.
And we can tell you pretty definitely that the car was a Manchester. Last year's model or the year before.
You sure?
You can take our word for it. I don't know whether it's any use to you, but there it is.
Oh, thanks, Dan. Thanks very much.
Anything else we can do for you?
Not at the moment. We'll let you know if there is.
Okay. Bye.
Right. That was Stan Hanley.
Huh?
I don't know how they did it, but they say the car in Hendon Park was a Manchester, last year's model or the years before.
A Manchester, eh? That rings another bell.
Yes, it does. When Hilda Maxwell was killed, a man was seen racing away from the scene in a Manchester.
Yeah, a stolen one.
Yes, but maybe our man has a weakness for them. You never can tell. It's a weakness that might lead us to him yet.
Perhaps. Meanwhile, I'd like to talk to that fellow West again.
What fellow who found the girl?
Yeah, that's the one.
You don't believe his story?
Oh, I don't know. But I'd just like to hear it again, so let's get him in. Very good of you to give us so much of your time, Mr. West.
Oh, no trouble at all, Inspector, though I don't think there's much I can add to what I've already told you.
Well, the point's this. We've made a lot of investigation since you made your first statement.
Hmm?
But I'm afraid we're not very much near a solution to the crime.
He must be a smart one, whoever he is. Never leaves a clue, does he?
Not many, anyway. But we'd like to go through your story again right from the beginning. Well, just in case you left anything out.
I don't think I did, you know.
Oh, no, possibly not, but you never know, do you?
Okay, I'm easy.
All right. You sit there. Right, Mick?
Fine, thanks.
Now, Mr. West, from the beginning, please.
Sure. Well, it was this way, you see. I was walking through Hendon Park just after dawn this morning.
Wasn't that rather early to be out for a walk?
Well, I told you all about that before, didn't I?
Yes, you did. But we're going over the whole thing again, step by step.
Now, just wait a minute.
Yes?
You fellows wouldn't be getting the idea that I might have done this murder, would you?
We haven't any idea who did it.
But you think I might have, eh?
Not at all. We're merely doing what I said we would. We're merely going over everything you and other people have told us right from the start. Now, look, please believe that.
It's the truth, Mr. West. Righto. That'll do me. But as for being out early for a walk, well, I'm out early every morning. Always have got up at crack of dawn ever since I was a kid. And I always reckon I might as well go out for a walk before breakfast and sit around the house, so that's why I was out this morning.
Right. Did you see anyone else around in Hendon Park?
Not a soul. Just mooching along on my own when all of a sudden I heard something. I couldn't for the life of me work out what it was at first.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard it again. It seemed to come from a clump of bushes to the right. I reckoned it was something moaning, so I went across. I got a terrible fright when I saw what it was. It was a girl. She didn't have any clothes on, and she was just lying there and moaning. I could see she'd been knocked about pretty bad, so I raced out into the street and stopped the first car I could and got him to drive me to the nearest police station. That's all I know.
There's nothing more you can tell us at all?
Not a thing.
Any questions, Mick?
I don't think so. What he's just said ties in exactly with his earlier statement.
All right, Mr. West, that's all we've been needing you for the time being.
I can go now?
Yes. Oh, and thank you again. I only wish everyone was as cooperative as you've been.
Sorry, I couldn't help a bit more. Give us a call if there's anything else, won't you?
Yes, of course.
Well, cheerio, Inspector.
Bye, Mr. West.
See you, Sergeant.
Yeah.
What do you think?
He's telling the truth.
Yes, I think so, too. So now we're right back where we started.
Yes. And that fiend is probably working out where he's going to commit his next murder. Let's face it, Mick. We're not 1 foot nearer to him than we were when we started looking for him months ago.
That was little short of the truth. In spite of all the work and concentrated effort that had gone into the hunt over a period of months, the man who'd killed 3 women was still at large. But not for a moment did the police give up.
All right, gentlemen. I think you all know why I've asked you to come here this morning. I don't have to tell you that the public is becoming increasingly uneasy with every day that passes without the apprehension of the man responsible for the deaths of 3 women. You know, and I know too, that everything we could have done has been done. Inspector Collins and his men have done a difficult and long job efficiently and well. And the fact that the murderer is still a free man is no reflection whatsoever on their ability or their determination or their willingness to work and go on working day and night until our man is caught. Yes. But it sometimes happens in circumstances like these that the application of an entirely new and fresh mind onto the problem proves beneficial. And that is what I propose should be done now. Again, there's no reflection on Inspector Collins and the men who've been working on this case with him when I tell you that I've decided that Sergeant Evans should take over the inquiry. You won't find it an easy job, Evans.
I realize that, sir.
But you will find that Inspector Collins, Sergeant Hill and the others will give you all the cooperation they can.
I'm sure they will, sir.
But apart from that, I want you to start right from the beginning. Pick your own team of men to work with you and go to it. And let's have some results, quickly.
So Sergeant Evans picked his men and went to work. Perhaps it was just luck, but within hours of his taking over the case, the sergeant received a telephone call that was to prove by far the biggest break the investigators had had.
Sergeant Evans?
Hastings Police here, Sergeant.
Yes?
You're looking for a Manchester car in connection with the death of that girl in Hendon Park.
Yes, we are.
Well, there's a Manchester been abandoned in a back street out this way. The transport people say it belongs to a Mr. F.D. Ellis, Henty Road, Randwick. Just thought we'd ring you before we got in touch with him.
Good. Leave the car just where it is. We'll be out to see it within a few minutes. Well, Max, what do you say?
Well, if ever there was a fingerprint on this bus, there isn't any more.
But there must be some.
I'm telling you there are not. They've been wiped clean.
Makes it seem more likely than ever that this could be the car used by the murderer. The tires checked with the tire marks we found at Hendon Park. The fact that someone's been to all the trouble of removing fingerprints, well, it all seems to add up, doesn't it?
You've been in touch with the owner yet?
Yes, but he's in the clear. The car was reported stolen long before the murder.
Yeah.
If only we could find someone who saw the car last night. Joe.
Yes?
We get a picture taken of this car and give it to all the newspapers. I want it given as much publicity as possible.
It's 7 o'clock, Harry. Time you had something to eat.
No, I'm not in the mood for eating.
There's no use going on like that.
But we're getting nowhere, Harry. Nowhere at all. I thought we might get a lead from that car, but what have we got? Nothing. No one saw the car, no one saw the girl. No one saw anyone, it seems to me.
We'll get a break sooner or later.
Maybe, but how much later? When how many more women have been killed?
Well, we're doing all we can. Don't forget how long Collins and the others were on the job. Months. We've only been at it for a few hours.
Yes, I know, but... Yes, Evans here.
Front desk here, Sergeant.
Yes?
There's a John Pitt down here. Wants to see you. Says it's about the murder of the girl. Won't tell me much. See the man in charge of this case, he reckons.
All right, send him up. All right, Mr. Pitt. Just tell us your story right from the start.
Well, it's this way. I saw the picture of that car in the paper, see?
Yeah?
Well, I'm a bus driver. Last night I was on late shift, see? Well, around about 10 o'clock, I'd reckon it was, I was driving the bus up Sandhurst Road down towards Andrews Point, you know?
Yes, we know.
Well, there's a bridge down there. And just as I was about to drive across it, a chap runs out into the middle of the road, waving his arms around for me to pull up. Well, I thought he might be in a bit of trouble, so I stopped. He came round to the door, stuck his head in, and asked me to sell him a gallon of petrol. Well, I had a tin on the bus, and I don't like to see blokes stuck, not at night. So I get the tin. He leads me to where there's a car standing. A Manchester, it was.
Oh, I see.
Well, it was what happened next that made me take notice of this bloke.
Well, what did happen next, Mr. Pitt?
Well, he'd asked me for a gallon of petrol, hadn't he?
Yeah.
But what happens when I start to pour it in, out of my tin?
You tell us.
It goes about a cupful, and then his tank starts to spill over. He didn't need any juice at all, that bloke didn't. Well, I thought, what kind of a joker is it who owns a car and doesn't know how much petrol's in his tank? Anyway, before I could ask him, he jumps into the car and tries to start her up. She won't go. There's not a kick out of her. That's when he comes out and starts fiddling around under the bonnet. And then you see...
Just a moment, Mr. Pitt.
Huh?
This is all very interesting, but what's it all got to do with the murder we're investigating?
Huh? Well, can't you see? That car that bloke had could easily be the one in the paper tonight.
It could be. But there are hundreds of cars exactly the same in the city.
Yeah, I know, but let me finish. On the car I'm talking about, the fan belt was broken. And a mate of mine came up while we was there and fixed it with a nail. I reckon that nail would still be there.
That's a point. And it's one we can soon check up on. The car's downstairs in the yard. Let's go down straight away and have a look at that fan belt.
There it is, see? Holding that fan belt together. A bent nail, just like I told you.
Mr. Pitt, it seems likely that you're one of the few people who have actually seen the man we're looking for. The man who's killed 3 women. You must know how important it is that we catch up with him.
Sure I do.
Then I want you to try to remember every word that was said when you were talking to him. I want you to try to picture the man, what he looked like, what he was wearing, anything unusual about him. Would you do that?
I'll do everything I can, Sergeant Evans. Everything I possibly can.
This man, he was a sort of short, kind of fattish-like. Not too fat, but fattish-like. And not too tall. Say about 5'8", or a bit more. He'd be more than 30, maybe about 35. And he had dark hair. And his clothes, they were shabby. They were very shabby.
Did he tell you where he was going, Mr. Pitt?
I asked him that because I didn't think that nail in the fan belt would stay there for long. He seemed to get a bit of a fright when I asked him. Sort of stammered a bit. Then he said, Mosman. I asked him if he knew many people out there. And he said, no, he was a stranger there. But the only ones he knew was a Mrs. Morgan who had 2 daughters.
Yeah, this could be it. I really think this could be it. If there is a Mrs. Morgan with 2 daughters living in Mosman, we might really be on the right track at last.
Brian Ferrer's checking the directory now. While he is, there's something else I've been thinking about.
Oh, what?
You know how the girls' clothes were tied up in a bundle with a stocking around it? In 2 out of the 3 cases?
Yeah?
Well, in the last case, anyway, the knot was a pretty unusual one.
Oh?
It's one that artillerymen use when erecting camouflage nets.
You sure?
I'm positive. And I'll bet the harbour bridge to nothing that the fellow we're after's a soldier.
A soldier, eh? Come to think of it, there are barracks not too far from where we found that car, aren't there? You might have something there, Joe, my boy. A soldier, eh? A soldier who happens to know a Mrs. Morgan who lives at Mosman with her 2 daughters. That's all we... Oh, hello, Brian. Found anything in the directory?
I surely have. There's one at Mosman, all right.
Mrs. Morgan?
Uh-huh.
With 2 daughters? Oh, what are we waiting for, then? Come on, let's go. We're truly sorry to worry you about this thing, Mrs. Morgan.
Oh, that's all right, Sergeant. But I really don't think we can help you. I've listened carefully to the description of the man you're looking for, but I just can't place him anywhere.
And yet we feel sure there is such a man who's known to you.
You do believe that I'd tell you if I knew who he was, don't you?
No, of course.
But we have no friends of that description. None at all.
Not you or your daughter?
No. Except... Oh, no, it wouldn't be him.
It wouldn't be whom, Mrs. Morgan?
It was months ago, Sergeant. A man my daughter met and who took her out a few times. He came here once or twice. A man named Edward Hudson. He was a soldier.
Seems almost too good to be true, doesn't it?
I won't believe it till we've actually seen the man.
It adds up almost too well. A soldier.
An artilleryman who'd know that special knot you were talking about, and who was living at barracks just a stone's throw from where we found that car abandoned. I can't wait to talk to Private or Corporal or whatever he is, Edward Hudson.
Hudson? Edward Hudson? Yes, there was a Private Hudson in barracks here. But you're too late, Sergeant. Far too late. He was discharged from the Army 5 months ago.
Eddie Hudson. Oh, he and his wife and kids used to board here. Oh, but they're gone. Oh, I don't know where to.
Right to the last, the killer was proving elusive. But the time came when the police got a definite lead on the whereabouts of Edward Hudson. And one night they waited patiently in a quiet suburban street.
Someone coming out of the gate now. It looks like Hudson.
All right. Let him get a bit further down the street, then drive up behind him, Stan. As soon as we get level with him, pull up. Joe and I'll hop out and grab him.
Right. Okay.
Righto, Stan. That'll do. Let's get him. Right, Stan, stop. Come on, Joe. Just a minute there. Huh? Edward Hudson?
Yeah, but...
Police here, Hudson. What? From the car here. We want to talk to you.
The long hunt was over. Edward Hudson denied any part in any of the crimes, of course. But at his home, detectives found articles from the stolen car that had been seen near the scene of the second murder. He was identified by the bus driver and others as the driver of the car that police were sure had been involved in the third murder. And eventually he admitted killing the first of the 3 girls, but pleaded provocation. He was charged first with the murder of Molly Henderson. The jury said manslaughter. Then he was charged with the murder of Hilda Maxwell. There were 3 trials, but the ultimate verdict was guilty. And Edward Hudson went to jail for the term of his natural life. Only names, place names, and dates were altered in this true story. It was dramatized from Australian police records by Roland Strong, who now says goodbye until next week, when there'll be another true story in this series, which is produced in the studios of Hector Crawford Productions by Dorothy Crawford.
Well, another compelling OTR segment there, and well, all pretty sobering stuff, isn't it? This is vk3sl test missions on 160 and streaming online, and I think we need to lighten the mood a little bit. So something frivolous, a 10-inch LP has fallen off the shelf, and it's a recording of George Thayer on the piano with rhythm accompaniment and a disc called More Echoes of Paris. We're going to tell you about Mr. Thayer. He started his career as a concert pianist when he emerged from the studies of Budapest Conservatoire under Doniani Kodai and Skelly. How interesting. And caused something of a sensation when he decided to give up the concert platform for the cabaret stage. Sacrilege. He never looked back. The most expensive and exclusive nightclubs and hotels in Paris, Deauville, Nice, Monte Carlo, The Hague, Geneva and St. Moritz were stepping stones on his road to fame. And it was not long before he was recognised as one of Europe's top entertainers. In 1951, he went to America, where he made his debut in New York's famous Goggies Le Roux. His success was immediate, and he soon found that he had the pick of the best-paid jobs in the fierce competition of New York's entertainment world. Fox's famous Echo series, which has begun shortly after Thayer settled in New York, where he now plays regularly at the Carlisle Hotel, brings his sparkling key magic into the homes of his ever-widening circle of admirers. Here, as a sequel to his first Echoes in Paris, he's yet another winner in this unique and popular series. This is vk3sl testing. Heard a selection of Parisian pastries, Echoes of Paris, with George Feyer on the piano. You heard side one. I think we'll save side two for another time because my pastries are ready inside. We're about to have dinner. So there we go. That's it for today. I'm theremined out. I've been reading about theremins and I'm all keen. I want to play the theremin. All right, folks. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. vk3sl, clear of the frequency.